I've stood in front of thousands of people in my life. Crowds with crossed arms, skeptical eyes, hearts closed tighter than a banker's vault. And I learned something invaluable. They didn't care where I studied, how many books I wrote, or how many letters stood after my name. They cared about one thing. Did I believe in what I was saying? True authority doesn't come from credentials. It doesn't come from plaques on a wall or names dropped in conversation. It comes from presence, from the calm, unwavering conviction of someone who has lived what they speak. You see, when a person stands with quiet strength, not arrogance, not performance, but rooted clarity, the room listens, the heart listens, and no diploma in the world can fabricate that. We've all met someone like this. They don't shout, they don't interrupt, but when they speak, silence falls. Not because they demand it, but because their words are carried by a weight far greater than ego, authenticity. In the early days of teaching night classes, I encountered men who had never set foot in a university, but when they spoke, you could feel the gravity of experience in their tone. Farmers who had buried sons and still chose to bless the harvest. Widows who knew how to hold silence without making it heavy. Factory workers who could ignite a room, not with theories, but with the way they told a story straight from the chest. I used to believe I needed to impress. I would practice my delivery, my posture, my citations. But over time, I realized something far simpler. People don't follow credentials, they follow character. The world is full of noise. Everyone is talking. Everyone is trying to prove something. But you don't need to prove your worth. You need to live your truth. So if you've ever felt unqualified because your resume isn't long enough or your past too imperfect, let me tell you, that's not what authority is made of. Real authority whispers, and it comes from a soul that no longer seeks to convince, but simply is. There's a certain peace that descends upon a person who no longer needs to be impressive, only honest. That peace, my friend, is the foundation of quiet authority. Maybe no one told you this, but the most powerful presence in a room isn't the loudest voice. It's the one that doesn't flinch under pressure. The one that doesn't rush to speak, but when they do, every syllable feels grounded, earned, not borrowed. I've come to believe that empathy, not expertise, is the true magnet of influence. People don't remember your credentials, they remember how you made them feel about their own potential. Do you know what gives a person credibility faster than any title? Listening. Real soul-level listening. When you make someone feel heard, truly heard, they instinctively trust you. Not because you gave them answers, but because you gave them space. There's a man I once knew, never went to college, didn't wear suits, didn't own much. But when he walked into a room, people straightened up. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. He was a retired welder. What gave him that presence? Decades of integrity. A reputation for never speaking ill, never promising what he couldn't deliver, and always being the last to leave when someone needed help. He didn't need to flash credentials. His life was his proof. That's what I want you to understand. You don't have to parade your achievements to be respected. In fact, the moment you stop trying to be impressive and start being present, people feel it, and they lean in. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from trusting yourself to face anything, and doing so with grace. So if your voice shakes when you speak, that's all right. If your past is full of mistakes, good. It means you've lived. It means you've learned. And that gives you something more powerful than theory. It gives you perspective. Let your presence speak for itself. Let your empathy do the work your resume never could. When you carry calm conviction in your chest, you become unforgettable. And that, I assure you, is a kind of authority no degree can grant and no doubt can take away. I remember one evening, after a lecture, a young man approached me with eyes full of worry. He said, "Mr. Carnegie, I want to lead. I want to inspire others. But I don't have the background, the pedigree. Who would listen to someone like me?" I looked him in the eye and said, "They will, when you stop asking for permission to be what you already are." Because the truth is, we don't follow people because of what they have. We follow them because of what they embody. We follow those who carry quiet resolve. We listen to those who don't speak to impress, but to connect. That's the foundation of leadership. Not dominance, but depth. What if I told you that your calm is more persuasive than your words? There's a power in stillness that can't be mimicked. When someone walks into a room with peace in their spine, it disarms even the harshest critics. You don't need to defend your value because you've stopped negotiating with your own soul. People feel that. They may not know why they trust you, but they will. Not because of your resume, but because you walk like someone who's already come home to themselves. That's the kind of authority that changes lives. It's the kind that comes from a teacher who doesn't just teach theory, but has tasted failure and still shows up with love. It's the kind that pours from a parent who lost everything and still smiles with eyes full of grace. It's the kind you find in the voice of someone who's been through the valley and didn't lose their softness. You don't need titles when you have testimony. You don't need applause when your presence carries truth. And if the world never recognizes you with awards or promotions, so be it. Your worth was never theirs to define, because you know deep down that your story is enough, that your scars speak louder than any certificate, and that the strength you've built in silence is a language only the soul can hear. You don't have to declare your wisdom. If it's real, people will feel it in your stillness, in the way you respond instead of react, in the way you choose clarity over noise. There's a story I once heard of an old woman who lived in a quiet village. She had no formal education, never traveled far from home, and yet people came from miles away just to sit on her porch. Not for advice, not for answers, but because in her presence their own thoughts settled. She had a way of making you feel like you already knew what to do. You just needed someone to help you remember. That is authority. Not the kind that forces obedience, but the kind that invites trust. You see, when you carry yourself with gentle certainty, people feel safe. And safety is the true soil where growth happens. Not fear, not status, but safety. So I ask you now, what kind of authority are you cultivating? Is it the kind that demands respect through credentials and credentials alone? Or is it the kind that earns respect through consistency, humility, and grace? The world needs fewer experts and more elders, fewer critics and more examples, fewer perfectionists and more humans willing to say, "I don't know everything, but what I've lived deeply, and I offer it to you with open hands." That's what makes people listen. That's what creates legacy. Because the truth is, when people remember you, they won't remember your job title or your degrees. They'll remember how your presence made them feel, whether your words lifted them or weighed them down, whether you led with pride or walked beside them with quiet power. You don't need to announce your value. You need only embody it. And you do that by living your message, by becoming so aligned with what you speak that your life becomes your resume, your kindness, your resilience, your refusal to quit. These are your credentials, and they're more than enough. So, how do you begin? You start by choosing integrity over image every single day. You begin to speak less and mean more. You practice doing what's right, even when no one applauds, even when no one is watching. Especially then, because that's where your authority is forged, not in spotlight, but in solitude. And when you fail, because you will, you don't cover it up. You don't pretend it didn't happen. You own it. You learn from it. You rise with more wisdom than you had before. That humility, that willingness to grow, is what makes you credible. Authority without empathy is a mask, but authority rooted in compassion, that's leadership. And it starts with how you treat yourself, because if you walk around secretly believing you're not enough, you'll spend your whole life trying to earn what you already possess. But when you begin to recognize the value of your story, the sacredness of your scars, the wisdom in your wounds, you stop seeking permission. You start walking with presence. You stop chasing validation. You start giving it to others. And that, my friend, is how true authority multiplies, not by dominance, but by dignity, not by shouting your importance, but by helping others feel theirs. So let your silence speak, let your actions echo, let your empathy carry weight. And never underestimate the quiet power of someone who walks in truth. Credentials may open doors, but character, calm, lived, unwavering character, builds bridges. And the world needs more bridges right now.